In the modern landscape of human existence, noise is no longer just an acoustic phenomenon. It has evolved into a devastating psychological weapon. Look around you. We live in an era defined by hyperconnectivity, relentless self-promotion, and an ambient urgency to voice every fleeting thought, emotion, and insecurity. Social platforms demand constant updates. Digital algorithms reward the loudest and most controversial voices, and society subtly conditions men to believe that validation is directly proportional to visibility. If you are not speaking, you are forgotten. If you are not reacting, you are perceived as weak. But this is the grand illusion of the modern world. The collective matrix wants you loud, reactive, and emotionally volatile because a man who speaks without thinking is a man who reveals his hand. A man who constantly seeks an audience is a man whose internal reservoir of validation is empty. When you look at the archetypes of historical dominance, the ancient emperors, the legendary Stoic philosophers, and the enigmatic modern figures like Thomas Shelby, you quickly realize that their power does not emanate from theatrical displays of aggression or endless streams of rhetoric. It stems from an absolute, unyielding mastery over their own silence. They understand a fundamental law of human nature that the masses have completely forgotten. Words are inherently cheap, and the currency of true power is restraint. To understand the synergy between Stoicism and the Sigma mindset, one must first understand what silence actually represents. Silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is the presence of absolute internal control. It is a psychological vacuum that forces the environment around you to adapt to your frequency, rather than forcing you to lower yourself to theirs. When a low-value individual enters a room, their immediate instinct is to dominate the space through noise. They speak loudly about their achievements, they over-explain their intentions, and they desperately look for nods of approval from those around them. This behavior is rooted in evolutionary fear, the fear of being cast out, the fear of being deemed irrelevant, the fear of being left alone with the terrifying emptiness of their own mind. The Stoic, conversely, views the mind as an impenetrable fortress. Epictetus once famously wrote that nature has given men one tongue but two ears, so that we may hear from others twice as much as we speak. This is not just a piece of polite moral advice. It is a tactical blueprint for social warfare and personal sovereignty. When you choose silence over reaction, you are executing a calculated withdrawal from the matrix of social validation. You are declaring that your emotional state is not property available for public rent. You refuse to let an external stimulus, whether it is an insult, an act of betrayal, or an unexpected crisis, dictate your internal peace. This introduction sets the stage for a profound transformation. If you want to separate yourself from the average 99% of men who are drifting through life as emotional puppets, you must learn to weaponize your quietness. You must become comfortable with the heavy, awkward silence that makes weak people squirm in discomfort. You must learn to look a man in the eyes during a heated argument and deliver absolutely nothing, no anger, no defensive words, no facial twitching, just cold, analytical observation. This is where the philosophy of the core begins. It is the understanding that the most dangerous weapon in your arsenal is not the word you speak, but the word you deliberately choose to hold back. To master the art of silence, we must look back at the giants of human history who transformed restraint into an empire. 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the Roman world, sat in his military tent and wrote words that would echo through centuries. He was a man who possessed absolute power. With a single phrase, he could end a life or destroy a city. Yet, his private journals reveal a man completely obsessed with ruling his own tongue before attempting to rule the world. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that most of what people say and do is completely unnecessary. He wrote, "If you remove the unnecessary, you will have more time and more tranquility." When you look at the modern world, men are drowning in the unnecessary. They react to every comment, defend themselves against every critics, and reveal their internal chaos through endless speech. Stoicism teaches that your mouth is the gate to your internal citadel. Every time you open it without purpose, you are lowering the drawbridge and inviting the enemy inside. You are letting external actors know exactly what hurts you, what makes you angry, and what you desperately desire. A high-value man keeps the drawbridge up. He listens intensely, processes intellectually, but responds only when it is absolutely necessary. The great philosopher Seneca added another layer to this strategy. He observed that men often regret their words, but rarely regret their silence. Seneca noted that a man who speaks too much is usually trying to project an image of authority that he does not actually possess. True confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to bark, it doesn't need to dominate the conversation, and it certainly doesn't need to prove its intelligence to strangers. When you look at modern archetypes like Thomas Shelby, you see this ancient Roman philosophy perfectly alive in the 21st century. When Shelby enters a negotiation, his silence is terrifying because it represents complete self-containment. He doesn't fill the room with empty threats. He allows the other person to talk because he knows that the more a man talks, the more mistakes he will make. By adopting this Stoic mindset, you stop being an emotional puppet of your environment. You stop letting the opinions of lesser men disturb your peace. You realize that your words are a limited resource, and you start treating them like pure gold. If a man insults you, your silence tells him that his opinion holds zero value in your world. If a man praises you, your calm response proves that you do not require his validation to know your worth. This is the Stoic fortress. It is the realization that the ultimate victory over your enemies is not out-arguing them, but making yourself completely untouchable to their noise. True power does not seek attention. It forces attention to seek it. In a modern society where everyone is desperately trying to prove their worth, the modern Sigma male stands out not by what he displays, but by what he conceals. He understands a dark psychological reality that the average man will never comprehend. Your words make you predictable, and predictability is the fastest path to being controlled. When you explain your every move, your plans, and your emotions to the people around you, you are giving them a remote control to your life. You are revealing your triggers, your insecurities, and your boundaries. A high-value man behaves like a black box. People see the inputs, and they see the final massive results, but they can never calculate what is happening inside the machine. This complete lack of data creates immense psychological pressure on your competition. Human beings are naturally terrified of the unknown. When you stay absolutely quiet during a crucial moment, you are forcing the other person to fill that silence with their own imagination. If they have guilty thoughts, they will assume you know them. If they are insecure, they will assume you are judging them. Your quietness becomes a mirror that reflects their own internal chaos back at them. While they are burning their mental energy trying to read you, you are sitting completely calm, gathering information, and calculating your next execution. Look at how Thomas Shelby operates in moments of extreme crisis. When his enemies scream at him, threaten him, or try to push him into a corner, he does not shout back. He doesn't offer defensive arguments. He simply looks them dead in the eye, takes a slow breath, and allows the heavy weight of the silence to suffocate the room. By refusing to match their aggressive energy, he completely disarms them. He changes the dynamic from a chaotic emotional fight into a cold intellectual chess game where he already holds the checkmate. This is why silence is lethal. It completely strips away the power of your enemies. An insult only works if it causes a reaction. A threat only works if it causes fear. If you give them absolute zero, no facial expression, no verbal defense, no emotional shift, their attacks lose all momentum and fall completely flat. You become an unmovable object, a human fortress that cannot be shaken by the opinions of lesser men. Train yourself to stop treating your thoughts as public property. When you build your goals in total isolation, your success hits the world like a sudden lightning bolt. Let them wonder how you achieved your wealth. Let them wonder how you built your discipline. Let them guess your next move. Remember, a king does not ask for permission, and he never explains his strategy to the crowd. Stay dangerous. Stay unpredictable. Stay silent. Philosophy is completely useless if it cannot be applied under heavy pressure. The ultimate test of a man's character doesn't happen when he is alone in a quiet room. It happens when he is standing in the middle of a social storm. In everyday life, you will constantly face people who try to test your boundaries, toxic coworkers, manipulative partners, or aggressive strangers who want to bait you into an emotional reaction. A high-value man does not fight back with noise. He deploys tactical silence. Consider the dynamic of a heated argument. When someone insults you, they are throwing a psychological hook, desperately waiting for you to bite. If you get angry, if you yell, or if you frantically try to explain yourself, you have lost the battle. You have handed them the victory because you prove that their words have the power to alter your emotional state. Instead, use the 3-second rule. When someone delivers an insult, stop completely. Look them directly in the eyes. Say absolutely nothing. Let the insult hang in the air until the silence becomes so heavy and awkward that they are forced to swallow their own toxicity. Your lack of reaction makes their attack look childish and weak. This strategy is even more lethal in the world of business and negotiations. Most people are terrified of empty space in a conversation. They feel a desperate, anxious need to fill the quietness with words. Experienced negotiators know this vulnerability and use it to destroy their opponents. When you are offered a deal or when a price is stated, do not respond immediately. Maintain intense eye contact and remain completely silent for 5 seconds. In 90% of cases, the other party will become nervous, assume their offer is not good enough, and immediately start bargaining against themselves. They will offer discounts, reveal hidden terms, or concede power just to stop the suffocating weight of your silence. Thomas Shelby uses this tactical leverage in every single meeting. He understands that the person who speaks less always holds the higher ground. By remaining quiet, he forces his opponents to reveal their hidden cards, their desperation, and their fears. He lets them exhaust their arguments and expose their weaknesses, while he saves his energy for a single, devastating countermove. True maturity is realizing that not every opinion deserves a response, and not every conflict requires your presence. When you choose to walk away or remain silent, you are not running away from a fight. You are demonstrating absolute superiority. You are showing the world that your time, your energy, and your mind are far too valuable to be wasted on cheap drama. Train yourself today to become emotionally untouchable. Let them shout, let them criticize, let them gossip behind your back. Your silence is the ultimate shield, and your calm execution will always be the loudest statement in the room. There is a tragic mistake that millions of men make every single day, completely unaware that they are sabotaging their own destiny. They believe that by talking more, they will appear more intelligent, more important, and more powerful. But human psychology operates on a completely opposite law. Scarcity creates value. When you talk constantly, you are flooding the market with your words, making them completely worthless. You are revealing the dark side of an unmastered mind. The hidden danger of talking too much is that it always stems from weakness. It is a desperate cry for attention, a subconscious plea to the world saying, "Please notice me, please validate my existence." When you rush to tell everyone about your new business idea, your fitness goals, or your personal achievements, you are seeking a cheap dopamine hit. You want the applause before you have even built the foundation. And by receiving that validation early, your brain loses the hunger to actually execute the work. The loudest men in the room are almost always the ones who achieve the least. Furthermore, a man who cannot control his tongue is incredibly easy to read and manipulate. Every time you over-explain your thoughts, you are giving away free intelligence to your competition. You are revealing your weaknesses, your fears, and your personal insecurities. In the criminal underworld, in corporate boards, and in high-stakes social circles, the biggest talkers are always the first to be exploited. They expose their vulnerabilities not because they want to, but because they simply lack the internal discipline to remain quiet. Look again at the psychological blueprint of Thomas Shelby. He never uses 2 words when one is enough. He never explains his motives to people who do not need to know them. When his enemies try to push him for information, his silence acts as an unbreakable stone wall. Because he reveals absolutely nothing, his opponents are left completely in the dark, unable to plan a counterattack, unable to find his emotional triggers. His quietness makes him completely untouchable. When you master the art of silence, you immediately rise above the noise of the average crowd. You stop participating in cheap gossip, you stop complaining about your circumstances, and you stop defending your character to people whose opinions don't matter. You realize that your energy is a finite, precious resource that must be protected at all costs. From this moment on, make a conscious choice to speak with absolute intent. If your words do not improve the silence, let the silence remain. Let other men waste their breath, bragging, arguing, and begging for approval. Your path is different. You build your power in total isolation, and you let your ultimate execution do the talking for you. We have arrived at the ultimate destination of the Stoic and Sigma philosophy. True power is not about ruling over others through force, noise, or tyranny. It is about becoming completely touchless, building an internal and external empire so solid that the chaos of the outside world cannot even scratch the surface. While the masses spend their entire lives reacting to the matrix, begging for validation, and burning their energy in empty arguments, the high-value man operates exclusively from the shadows. Building in the shadows means you no longer announce your moves before you make them. When you start a new business, when you change your diet, when you build a new stream of wealth, or when you push your body to the absolute limit in the gym, you keep it completely to yourself. You do not look for likes on social media. You do not look for pats on the back from your friends. You understand that public attention before private execution is nothing but poison for your discipline. Let your results hit the world like a sudden, unannounced thunderstorm. A touchless king uses his silence as an absolute filter for his environment. When you stop speaking unnecessarily, you notice a fascinating shift in your social circles. Weak, toxic, and manipulative people will naturally drift away from you because your quietness gives them no emotional fuel to feed on. On the other hand, high-value individuals will instinctively respect you because they recognize the immense discipline required to hold your tongue. Your presence becomes heavy, magnetic, and deeply commanding without you ever having to lift your voice. Look at the final picture of Thomas Shelby's ascension. He achieved absolute dominance not because he was the loudest gangster in Birmingham, but because he was the coldest strategist in the room. He built his empire brick by brick, in complete isolation, while his enemies underestimated him because of his quiet nature. By the time they realized his true power, the chess game was already over. The trap was sprung, and he was completely untouchable. This is the ultimate blueprint for your life. Master your tongue, and you will master your destiny. Stop wasting your divine energy on people who only deserve your absolute silence. Become the author of your own reality, independent of the opinions, criticisms, and applause of the crowd. Stay disciplined, stay focused, and above all, stay silent. If this multi-part manifesto has awakened something deep inside your mind, it means you belong to the top 1% of men who are truly ready to take control of their future. Prove your commitment right now. Leave a 1% in the comments below, subscribe to the channel, and smash the like button to join our brotherhood of high-value men. Your journey into the shadows begins today.